Hey there, welcome to another episode of Just Say It. I am Matt Patrick. I'm with Chase Davis as usual, but today we have a special guest in the studio. We have William Wolf joining us. We were joking before we started that this is a new podcast between two Christian nationalists, for all those that like to call us that, but just joking, right?
It is a joke. We've never called ourselves that.
Yes,
to be
yeah.
clear.
To be clear.
What is a Christian nationalist?
That's a great question.
Here you go. Now, let's stay on topic. We could ramble all day. We got a lot to do because today, actually, the three of us and several other pastors from all over the state and some other leaders are going to be down at the state capitol for the Fight 1312 rally. So if you're not caught up on that, you will be a little bit today. I believe we're going to be releasing this in a few days after, but hopefully this will be informative to you. We want to chat about that. We're also going to chat a little bit about the SBC and the Center for Baptist Leadership. And so I think this episode is going to be really helpful for people. So we want to take advantage of having William Wolf in town. Thank you for joining us and flying in. You got in last night?
Last night.
All right. And where do you come from? Maybe fill the people in a little bit about who you are as a Christian nationalist.
Okay.
Just joking.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is going to be a very exciting podcast. I've heard a lot of people at your church say this might be your best podcast ever. So thank you very much for having me on here today. Yeah, I'm from outside Charlotte, North Carolina. So other side of the country, man. I've been through Colorado once before, but I've never really spent any time here in Denver. So glad to be here. Got in late last night. Married over 10 years, got 3 boys, 7, 5, and 2.5. So we have full and fun times on our hands at the Wolf household. And yeah, I run the Center for Baptist Leadership. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to institutional reform and revitalization within the Southern Baptist Convention. In short, to stop it from going woke and to help it be better, do better, please. And then also to help rally Southern Baptists, of which there are like 13 million in the United States of America, to be more engaged and forceful and effective in the public square.
That's excellent. So I'd love to hear more maybe of your background. I mean, I believe you were at Capitol Hill Baptist Church. That was pretty formational for you. You were at Southern. You got your MDiv there, right?
Yep.
So maybe fill in some background details about kind of what got you into this role that you're now in, leading the Center for Baptist Leadership. Maybe it's always helpful for Christians to know how people got called into their current place in life. So share a little bit about that with our church.
Yeah, so I became a Christian after college, and through the grace of God, meeting Mark Dever, who was the pastor at Capitol Baptist Church, I really, rock bottom, right? I had lost my younger brother, who was 15 at the time, in a tragic accident, and I, despite having grown up in a Christian household, been homeschooled, gone to a Christian high school, gone to a Christian college, it really was a case of a false profession, a fake profession. And I was living in a very, ungodly, worldly, sinful lifestyle. So when my brother passed away, I didn't really have the framework to cope with it, deal with it rightly, righteously. It led me in a very sort of dark and spiraling path. Mark and I met in the parking lot at Capitol Baptist Church, and he shared the gospel with me and was one of the first people to tell me, as far as I could remember at that point in time, look, just because you said a prayer when you were 9 years old, that doesn't make you a Christian. And the way you tell me you live your life makes me think you're not a Christian. But the good news is that real Christianity is so much better than the fake thing you think you've had. Then he took me to Galatians 5 and walked through the acts of the sinful nature and the fruits of the Spirit, and asked which described my life. And it was clearly, the acts of the sinful nature. And then through reading the book of Isaiah, a couple of days later, God used that to bring me to salvation and faith. And I say all that because it front loads how I ended up doing what I'm doing, which is, okay, now I think I'm a Christian. What do? I need to go to a church. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., not to get involved in politics, but to be a part of a church. And so I moved there in early 2012. So it's been 13 years now since then. And I was baptized there, joined the church, and then I needed a job. So I had studied history. I've always had an interest in politics, always been interested in the fight of ideas and truth, and I've always been a patriot, right? Just like grew up loving this country. And so I got involved working on Capitol Hill for members of Congress. I did that for about 4 years. Then I worked at Heritage Action, which is the political arm of the Heritage Foundation. Then Trump ran, loved Trump, just like instinctually by nature was excited for him, which is crazy.
Were you an early adopter, like 2016?
Very early adopter, man. And that put me at such
Better
odds.
than us.
It put me at such odds with the evangelical culture in Washington, D.C., and even at my church. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus to say this. Like, I was one of the very few Christians at Capitol Baptist Church genuinely excited for Trump. And happy to vote for him. And it was really during that season I started to realize when wokeness was hitting. So I've been a Christian, practicing Christian for 4 years now or something like that. But, I was very conservative. I'd read my Bible through multiple times, just cover to cover, reading all these sort of like, the Reformed classics and Packer and Piper and, people like that and Sproul. And then we start getting things like Black Lives Matter. And then Donald Trump, and I just sort of thought, like, what is wrong with you people? Like, this is not what I was expecting how Christians would deal with these things. And then really during the Trump time, with like Russell Moore's just ridiculously over-the-top opposition to him, all the evangelical Christian leaders being so anti-Trump, I was like, okay, something is wrong. Something is off with how Christians are thinking through politics in America. And that gave sort of a rock in my shoe of something I wanted to pursue later. So I had a chance to work for Trump. And then after that was done, I did the pastoral internship at CHBC. Then I went to Southern because I wanted to finish my MDiv, study in person some with Andrew Walker, and really pursue Christian ethics and Christian political theology. And that sort of leads us to where we are today.
That's awesome. That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to hear how God has worked in your life and how God used that church and how you courageously moved there to join that church and how you've been involved. With the Center for Baptist Leadership specifically, it's very much about, getting in the SBC and fighting for the truth. It's something that appealed to us about the SBC. I think it's fair to say it's one of the reasons we like the SBC is because you can just start things. You can just do things. Mm-hmm. You can start organizations, nonprofits that advocate for your interests in the SBC. Whereas in other networks, that's frowned upon. You might get dismissed from that network for doing such activities, whether openly or behind the scenes.
I've heard.
I've heard. I don't know. And so why? I mean, you've already kind of said there's 13 million Southern Baptists in America. It's the largest Protestant denomination in America. Maybe preview for our church who aren't online. They love our church. They may get confused on why we either get riled up about some things or why we're passionate about some things because it's not really an issue at our church, mm-hmm. but it's an issue out there in many churches. So, what are some of the big issues we're facing in the SBC?
Yeah, well, so the Southern Baptist Convention is such an incredible historical anomaly in many ways in American Christian life. As with all the other major Protestant mainline denominations, which people will quibble with calling the SBC a mainline denomination, it sort of is and isn't. They all got completely hijacked by theological liberalism in the 20th century. German higher criticism, they stopped believing that the Bible was inerrant, that Jesus was actually the Son of God, that his miracles were trustworthy and verifiable, and that once you start dissecting and undermining the Word of God, it has a whole host of implications for your ethics, for your politics, primarily for your sexual ethics, where you stand on abortion, marriage, gender, things like that. And so as the Episcopalians, the Methodists, the Presbyterians all fall prey to this massive subversion, Southern Baptists were too. And in this 1970s and 60s and 70s, they were starting to let seminary professors publish articles and books that said, hey, we don't really know if we can believe that Jonah really happened, and that sparked an outrage amongst the pews that sort of were led by elites, pastors, and other organizers to retake the institution, drive out the moderates and the liberals, and this is called the conservative resurgence. It's truly unique in American Christian denominational history. Well, that was a generation ago. Every generation has the task to fight for faithfulness in their time. New forms of liberalism have crept into the Southern Baptist Convention. It's not so much that we have people out there denying the inerrancy of Scripture, but we have people who are really squishy on like biblical anthropology. Like, what does it mean to be a man or a woman? What do we do with transgenderism? I mean, even in 1991, I believe it was, when I was taking one of my history classes at Southern, there's this excerpt in one of the books there that says there was a Southern Seminary professor who spoke at a rally at a Planned Parenthood in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1991 in defense of abortion rights. And this was before Al Mohler got in and sort of cleaned things up. Brothers, that was 30 years ago. I mean, we could be 30 years out from that happening again. And so as I've seen new forms of liberalism that are much more politically oriented but have theological implications really kind of creep in and affect the Southern Baptist Convention, and others have seen this too, we realize it's time to fight again. And really that's what the Center for Baptist Leadership is here to help organize the people in the pews and the pastors and the people who fund this entire gospel effort to make sure that we're actually defending our theology, that we're actually being Baptist. I mean, you guys have been in some various different church networks and organizations. The push right now all across American evangelicalism is downplay distinctives. We're just generic evangelicals. You know, what does it mean? You can be Baptist, you can be Presbyterian. Hey, let's try to build a denomination where Baptists and Presbyterians work together. I've heard of such things. So let's be Baptists. Let's be theologically orthodox, and let's be unapologetic in our commitments. And that's what we're trying to help bring back to the SBC.
Talk maybe a little bit about, so the SBC is huge, as we've already said, but there are organizations within it that kind of guide it and direct it. So maybe talk a little bit, because the SBC is new for our church.
Sure.
Chase and I know a lot about this stuff, but we want to educate people. There's committees. There's things like the ERLC.
Yeah.
And so talk about how the SBC kind of gets things done, or how
Sure.
people get into positions that make decisions on how the whole entire SBC is going to go.
Sure. So that I was giving you sort of our vision and some history. So this is SBC 101. So the Southern Baptist Convention is, a cooperation of independent Baptist churches. They own their buildings. They elect their own pastors and appoint their own elders, or perhaps they're run by deacons, which is the way in many Baptist churches these days. But they choose to voluntarily associate and cooperate together for the advancement of the gospel, primarily in sending foreign missionaries. That's how it started, this whole thing. The Foreign Missionary Board was sort of the first entity of the Southern Baptist Convention. Now we call it the International Missions Board, the IMB. And so Baptist churches started associating to do these things, and so they kind of pooling money together, and this is what we call the cooperative program. And so then over decades, over a century, more than a century, we have built 6 seminaries. So the Southern Baptist Convention has 6 seminaries, including Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, Southeastern, Southwestern, Golden Gate, New Orleans, and Midwestern. And so that's for theological education, to train the next generation of Southern Baptist pastors and professors. 6 seminaries, International Missions Board to do global missions work, North American Mission Board to do church planting on the North American continent, which is really just primarily America, right? I mean, we do some in Canada and Mexico. Then we also have the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, which is our public policy and advocacy arm that's headquartered in Nashville and Washington, D.C. We have Lifeway, historically a major Christian publisher. Very interestingly, Lifeway ended up shuttering all their brick and mortar shops and is purely online now. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple other. We have Guidestone, which is one of the nation's largest Christian asset management firms. And then within the sort of the, I don't know how you call it, sort of the governing structure of the Southern Baptist Convention, we have something called an executive committee, because the Southern Baptist Convention technically only exists for 2 days a year when we all get together at our annual meeting. And so this executive committee governs us in absentia throughout the rest of the year. So we have an executive committee president. I will say this is not the most charitable term, but I think it's a pretty fair way to describe it. The executive committee is sort of like the Southern Baptist Convention deep state. It's the permanent bureaucracy. We elect a president every year. Presidents can serve for 2 consecutive terms. So we've elected Clint Presley last year. He's going to run this year again, probably be elected again. So our president changes essentially every 2 years, sometimes 1 year. But this executive committee bureaucracy exists all throughout the year. And then last thing to mention too, which has been in the news, is there's another body called the Credentials Committee that examines whether churches are operating in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention's Statement of Faith, the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. They're the ones who are supposed to say, hey, you guys are inside the bounds or outside the bounds. You have women pastors, you're outside the bounds. They've kind of quit doing that. Like, they've just kind of quit making the obviously right play calls on churches that are subverting our doctrine. And so, there's this whole system that exists, but to break it all back down and summarize, the Southern Baptist Convention has seminaries and other entities to train pastors, send missionaries, and help plant churches. That's what we do.
That's great. So at the Center for Baptist Leadership, you're publishing a lot of great articles from a lot of great pastors and thinkers, and I love the emphasis on having a wide representation from age, not only age demographic of Southern Baptist pastors, but also even perhaps different convictions, soteriologically, but we're all committed to this kind of fight. What are kind of some of the top concerns? Because you already mentioned, the battle of yesteryear, the battle of yesterday was 30 years ago to the conservative resurgence. Now we're seeing theological liberalism kind of weasel its way back in a variety of things. So maybe talk about one, like Rhett Burns has written on financial transparency, and talk about who are some of the big players that would it be fair to say that the Center for Baptist Leadership opposes people that are operating kind of like the ERLC, that kind of thing. So kind of get into some of the things that you're pushing for.
Yeah, guys, I can talk about this all day, so I'll try to keep my answers brief as Matt just sits here in between us. So look, what happened was across all of American evangelicalism, particularly in the Southern Baptist Convention, because we were 45,000 churches, like we are the biggest denomination of American evangelicals, so to speak. In the 2000s and to the 2010s, seeker-sensitive church growth consultant movement that really brought a lot of pragmatism into the Southern Baptist Convention and all of American evangelicalism, downplaying doctrinal distinctives and defending boundaries and just sort of this seeker-sensitive pragmatism. That sort of laid a base layer that when things really started to accelerate towards wokeness, it hijacked that sort of operating system, because if your primary concern is how can we reach the most people, if you think the culture is rushing to the left, you've got to rush to the left with them. And so we had many years, over a decade, but really 6 years of leadership in the Southern Baptist Convention from J.D. Greer, who got 3 years. He's got an extra one during COVID. Ed Litton and Bart Barber, that just kind of, in this pragmatic way moved us to the left. And at the same time, seminary professors and other institutional leaders were adopting things like critical race theory. When we passed this resolution in 2019, sort of affirming critical race theory as an analytical tool, we started doing kingdom diversity programs at our seminaries, which is just a Christian form of DEI. We had J.D. Greer arguing that we could use pronoun hospitality using an argument from Preston Sprinkle. Now, he's later recanted of that, but that was so you look at those main buckets like DEI, CRT, trans issues, like we were just sort of moving along with the culture at a slower pace under this pragmatic left-leaning leadership. So that's given us a lot of issues. So one of the main issues that we're fighting now is to secure more financial transparency from our entities. Rhett's leading that fight because we think that financial transparency is the key to unlocking trustee management. All of our entities are governed by trustees, and they're not doing their job. And why aren't they doing their job? Because they're not held accountable, because nobody knows. Nobody knows how much this seminary president is making, or how much Kevin Ezell, the CEO of NAM, is making. We don't have any idea how many NAM church plants actually, stick after 5 years or not. We don't know how many NAM church plants are actually Southern Baptist churches and not sort of loosely evangelical, soft egalitarian churches. And so Rhett Burns is saying, we give you guys the money. We want to know how it's spent according to sort of best practices and standards in nonprofit worlds, this 990 reporting. And the pushback on that has been aggressive. These guys do not want to turn the lights on. They do not want to open up the books, and they do not want to let churches like yours see how they're stewarding the money. While at the same time, cooperative program giving is down year over year. Churches are leaving the Southern Baptist Convention. At the state level, a lot of churches are circumventing giving to the cooperative program, because if you give your money to cooperative program, it could go to any of the entities, and you might not trust some of them. So they're not giving to cooperative program designated giving, around the SBC. And so this is a huge issue. The basic argument here is increased transparency gives us increased accountability over the trustees, both on theology and practice, and that will actually recreate trust in the convention. I could pause there. That's sort of a big one.
That's great. So is it fair? Which SBC entity would be best compared to like what we've seen with the U.S. government, like USAID? Is there like a...
Yeah, probably NAM, right? NAM is probably the USAID of the SBC. They have so much money. They're sitting on massive asset piles, particularly in property and other things. And like there's no clarity. It's completely opaque. And then particularly pay attention to the David Platt documentary, what happened at McLean Bible Church. I mean, NAM is at the center of that, and their sort of network for the D.C. area is at the center of that, where McLean Bible Church, this church that was constitutionally supposed to be non-denominational, they brought in David Platt, and NAM and Platt essentially turned McLean into their local piggy bank. It looks like a money laundering scheme, and I've watched the documentary, and they worked with them to get McLean to join the SBC, even though they shouldn't, according to their constitution. And then McLean and Platt were lying to their members about it. And the whole purpose there was for NAM, again, to essentially just raid the coffers. It reminds me of like the David and Bathsheba story and the rebuke from Nathan. It's like NAM has millions and millions of dollars. Why do they need to go blow up this church and raid their coffers to steal this one lamb from this one congregation? They didn't need to do it. There's so many other examples that could be pointed to with NAM, but NAM is probably the most problematic one when it comes to like management and finances and theological fidelity across the board. The ERLC is the most problematic one politically. They're really advancing the more left-leaning, squishy, evangelical vision of things.
Well, I think I could speak for the both of us if you guys want to get a Doge for the SBC.
We need a Doge.
Chase and I think Chase would be great for ERLC, and I can take NAM, and we can just go in there and
do it.
And have a great time doing it.
Open the books.
I think that's a good transition point.
Sure.
Let's talk about why you're here,
Sure.
why you're in town. So on Sunday I preached, and the second half of my sermon was pretty much dedicated to bringing up the issues that are going on in our state, in the state of Colorado. If you're not familiar, our state is trying to pass some very, very wicked bills, but there's one that's kind of imminent and that's big right now, and that is HB 251312. I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty of what's in the bill, but basically it criminalizes things like dead naming. It can take kids away from the parents if the parents don't support preferred gender things that the kid has going on, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot going on with that bill, but the bottom line is it's wicked. It's evil, and it's terrible. And we joined up. It's really funny. We have a text group that we have with a bunch of Colorado pastors that just started as just kind of a way for us to get connected. Chase, I think you actually started it. And all of us looked at each other and just said, we can't allow this to happen. We can't allow this bill to be passed. We can't completely control, but our God can. And so we trust him in what he will do there. But we said, man, we really got to speak out against this. And it's kind of rolled into this whole entire thing that's kind of culminating today, where we're going to be at the state capitol speaking out against it. I believe both of you guys are speaking today, right? Yeah. And then several other pastors. I'm going to stand behind you guys and clap a lot. It'll be great, and so it's going to be a great time for that. But really, William, maybe share briefly, why did you feel, you're in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. This is the state of Colorado. Mm-hmm. You're with the Center for Baptist Leadership. Why was it important for you to get on a plane and come out here?
Yeah, well, we don't have a motto at the Center for Baptist Leadership, but if we did, I think it would be run to the sound of the gun, and particularly in support of Baptist pastors and all pastors, but Baptist pastors like Chase Davis and yourself and Sean Cole and others who are in this fight and help them on things that matter to them. One of our main lines of mission is to be a better Baptist voice in the public square. And that's what's happening right now. This is not an internal to the SBC fight. That's a lot of what we do. But this other thing we do is we try to equip and help Baptist pastors be strong Christian prophetic voices in the public square, and what I cannot think of a more important issue than this one, right? It's like I would think if I were to have Center for Baptist Leadership sit this out, that would weigh heavy on my conscience. That would be a major failure. Like this is what we are here to do, is to provide support for pastors in fights such as these. And so when I saw that you guys were rallying to oppose this, I just wanted to help in any way that I can. And primarily the way that we've done that, of course, is through publishing articles, podcasts, information, educating people, amplifying, right? So it's like by God's grace, through my personal use of X, I've been able to build a decent platform on there and a decent following, and Center for Baptist Leadership gets good engagement too. So I just sort of want to hand these tools over to guys like you and say, use these platforms, use my megaphone, get your message out, and we're here to help you in this fight.
That's great. One of the things that you could probably help me articulate better, because I'm trying, when I encounter when I'm trying to talk to other ministers and other Christians, is, for example, we were kind of first, I guess, that gained any kind of traction on bringing attention to this. Mm-hmm. There's been other great organizations in Colorado that have been doing great work for years on these kind of matters. But in terms of churches speaking up, we're kind of no, this is exactly what we need to speak about. This is an affront to God. And so we have no problem with that. But what we saw after the fact is we did see the ERLC come out with something. We saw the Gospel Coalition write an article yesterday, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I think many Christians, they mean well and they want to believe the best. And so when they see maybe a guy like me or a guy like you or any of us kind of, making fun of the ERLC for being late, or kind of playing down their efforts, don't you want all the help you can get? And I'm torn because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, we do. I'm really glad they actually said something. Sure. That's great. But maybe for normal Christians, another example might be a church in Colorado recently, one of the mega churches that we challenged to speak. They did speak, but they didn't name the bill, they didn't name the party, they didn't name why we're opposed to it, and they didn't highlight broader trends in the state. I mean, he only spent 2 minutes, and you can do a lot in 2 minutes, but a lot of Christians look at that and be like, they did something, you know. And so, why is that not enough, or what do we want? What do we want to see more of, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that particularly attracted me to this fight to help you guys was that it was these smaller and more mid-sized, or average, as I like to call them, average-sized churches.
I'm offended. We're so average.
Look, man, 70% of all Southern Baptist churches are 100 members or less. Yeah. So you guys are already in the top 30%, guys. And so, look, there's just been this total abdication, really, of meeting the moment with what's necessary, right? So it's full faithfulness requires meeting the moments with everything that's necessary to do what's right and best in that moment. And, late or half measures, while welcome, as you mentioned in your article last night, they might be the last servant hired, but at least they still were hired. It's fair to say hey, guys, that's not really enough, right? For a couple weeks now, you've been sounding the alarm. You sent this letter to the bigger churches. You sort of called on these legacy Christian institutions here to step in and use their resources, their reach, and their platform to rally people to fight this bill, and they've largely been silent. And so, yeah, that's disappointing. But, look, we appreciate whatever, if somebody joins a battle late and starts shooting in the right direction, amen, yeah, right? Yeah. We can talk about their tardiness later, or we can talk about it a little bit right now too. But look, I think that, the Gospel Coalition's unwillingness to use the word Democrat is just so bizarre. It's who? Who?
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's hey guys, there's only there's only two main political parties. Any idea which one is doing this? And it's like that SNL George Washington skit. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's in the ERLC too. It's this is one of my concerns, and I'll say this today, is there are probably about 300 Southern Baptist Convention churches here in Colorado. I don't know. I hope maybe 30 will be represented there today at the rally. Maybe 20 have done real work on this. And when the ERLC finally did engage, they didn't charge the Southern Baptist Convention churches to come to this rally. In fact, they kind of acted like it wasn't happening. And so I'm going to be honest here and just lay this out. I'm really thankful for the work we're doing for Center for Baptist Leadership, and whether people want to give us credit for it or not, I think we're driving conversations. I will say I'm not sure if the ERLC would have engaged if you guys hadn't been doing what you were doing and we hadn't stepped in to help amplify it. So we're setting the conversation and pushing the agenda, even as an upstart group, and you guys are too, whether people want to recognize that or not.
Yeah, it's good. So this show is primarily for our church, our people. I know other people listen.
Sure.
But we've gone through a journey, I would say, since 2016 to now is kind of we were pretty generic evangelical. I will say we've always kind of had a backbone for things like abortion, and we've always been willing to talk about that stuff. But we saw a shift even when Roe versus Wade was overturned. We canceled the normal sermon we had and basically celebrated that as a church and preached on that. And so we were willing to go there. But for the people in the pews, right? I think a lot of people. I'm thinking of my schedule this week. I've got soccer games. I've got baseball games. Families in town for Easter, all these things. And it's like, man, I'm so busy. Like, should I, as just a normal Christian sitting in the pew, be concerned about these things?
I'm ready for this one.
And is it, and maybe share to the people who might go, man, I'm kind of tired of hearing my pastor get political.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the fundamental issue at hand here is the question of the responsibilities of citizenship. Man, brothers and sisters and everybody at the well here is, you are American citizens. What a blessing. And with that blessing and with that privilege and with those rights come responsibilities. Like, we, the people, are the government here in the United States of America. That's the idea. And it's unique, and it's been incredible for hundreds of years here. And those responsibilities include stepping into the political arena, speaking to your representatives. They're called representatives. Who do they represent? You. If you don't tell them what you think, who are they representing? Lobbyists, media, corporate interests, right? Like, yeah, the grill Americans or even the Christian Americans who are like, yeah, man, I just want to do evangelism. I just want to reach people. Hey, that's great. You are a citizen of heaven. Brother, you're also a citizen here in America, in Colorado, in Boulder, in Denver. You have rights and responsibilities, and there are people that are being attacked. And fundamentally, those people that are under attack here are children. And so you have been also tasked by God to do justice. And justice has gotten such a bad name amongst conservative evangelicals because of social justice. I don't like the term social justice, but when we talk about defending the rights of the needy, the orphans, the poor, who are the needy and the poor in this situation? It's unborn babies in Colorado, in which you have your Speaker of your House testifying that it'll be cheaper for the government to encourage women on Medicaid in Colorado to abort their babies instead of raise them. I mean, how much more needy are those children than in this situation? Then you have born children, living children, young children, elementary school, middle school, who are at the mercy of this ridiculously demonic agenda of transgenderism, trying to tell them that they're born in the wrong body, which is ridiculous. I mean, we're going to look back on this period of time, I think, and we're going to say, we went insane. We let people stand in our schools and tell our children that if they shot themselves up with drugs or put on different clothes or dyed their hair or cut off parts of their healthy body, they could change their sex, which is a total fiction. And we're going to have this generation of children who get through this period, who have been taken hostage by this. They're going to be hurting. They're going to be broke. They might be angry and even violent because of what's happened to them. And so, yeah, like you want to go to your soccer games. That's great. You don't want to hear about politics. Okay, well, politics wants to hear about you, and it wants to come after your kids. Who's going to stand in the gap? You have to. You have to right now.
That's great. I love that.
Blessings of liberty.
Yes. Amen. Well, William, this was a great conversation. I'm really inspired now to go to our rally and speak.
I'm ready too, man.
It's going to be a great time. Any kind of closing thoughts from you or anything you want to promote while we've got you on the air?
Yeah, well, I'm just so thankful for you guys, man. I mean, even from what I understand of sort of your development over the last few years, I think is appropriate, being willing to get into the fight. And yeah, like, don't get political every Sunday. I mean, you don't have to, right? But it's like when Roe v. Wade gets overturned after 50 years, how could you not speak to that? Well, if you're Russell Moore, you manage not to, right? But if you're Matt Patrick, you do. When children in your state are under attack, when parents and families are under attack, how can you not speak to that? And it wasn't your whole sermon, but that 7-minute clip I watched was incredibly well done, brother. It was perfect. So I just want to say I'm encouraged by you guys. If you're a member at this church, you're in good hands. And check us out at the Center for Baptist Leadership. Glad to have you guys in the Southern Baptist Convention fight. It's a worthy cause. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, William. And thank you guys for listening. If you liked this or didn't, share it. Share it with other people, get the conversation started. And we do really want to encourage you as Christians in our church to be able to think about these things wisely, prudently, and shrewdly. But we also want you to be able to engage with your neighbors. We want you to be able to talk with other people. We don't want you to live in fear of the opinions of man. We want you to fear God first and foremost. And so we'd encourage you to start start conversations on this. This rally we're holding today, I think this podcast will come out the day after Easter, but the legislature closes in, I think, 21 days, something like that, in the next 3 weeks. And so we're going to continue to keep this pressure up. So if you're tired, kind of like what we talked about, of hearing about this, we're going to keep this pressure up until we defeat this bill, and it's going to be awesome. So we're really looking forward to that. But thanks so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.